The first four programs here are from the Journal of the American Oriental Society. Volume 2, Article 12, page 257 to 324. And then the fifth program is from the same journal, Volume 3, Article 2, page 167 to 193. Introduction. Is some time ago, I received from Dr. Henry W. de Forest, missionary in Syria, an Arabic manuscript of 57 leaves consisting of 3 documents which throw new light upon the opinions held by the Ismailis and other sects of allegorists or mystics of Muslim origin. 2 of these documents bear the marks of being authoritative with the sects themselves, whose views they profess to represent, while the other, though controversial in its design and character, is valuable for comparison with them. The history of the Ismailis and their branches, of which the Druzes consist, one of the most important, well, let's say the Druzes are a branch off of that are like their own religion, you could say, is, at least in its outline, sufficiently well known, but excepting the Druzes, whose books have now for some time been in the hands of the learned, the opinion of none of them have been definitively ascertained. Of the Nusayrian and Ismailian documents, announced within the last 3 years in France and Germany, as recently discovered, only outlines with brief extracts or mere tables of contents have as yet been published. Under these circumstances, though with some diffidence, I published the following translation of 2 of the documents sent to me by Dr. de Forest, setting one of them aside for the present, for fear that I may not have yet fully mastered the system contained in it. The document set aside consists of 2 fragments of what purports to be a conversation between Muhammad ibn Ali al-Baqir and Khalid ibn Zayd al-Jufi, related by the latter in the form of a missive for the purpose of directing certain persons supposed to have deviated from the path of rectitude. So sort of like nowadays people are going to say jihadi documents or something like that, or fundamentalist tracts or whatever. The former of the 2 interlocutors are here introduced can be no other, as the conversation itself shows, than the 5th Imam of the Ismailis, commonly known as al-Baqir, a great-grandson of the Khalifa Ali. The other, who appears as an inquirer, not so easily identified, but may be conjectured to be a descendant of Ali, whose father was a brother of al-Baqir. But inasmuch as Shahrastani informs us that the Shiite sects, after the time of al-Baqir, were much disposed to pass off their opinion upon his followers and to refer their origin to him and to fix them on him, the question naturally arises whether we have in this missive the genuine doctrine of al-Baqir, or of that of some party availing itself of his name to give currency to views, in reality not his. To judge by what Shahrastani tells us of the opinions of al-Baqir, the missive in question might be taken as an authentic expression of his mind, for he here denies, either implicitly or by implication, each of certain doctrines which are particularly mentioned by Shahrastani as not actually held by him, and which, therefore, appear to have been those oftenest ascribed to him falsely. It is possible, however, that some party with which he was not so generally confounded, or perhaps kindred to his own, may have here used his name without authority. At all events, this missive sets forth doctrines different from those maintained by either of the sects referred to or represented in the two other documents. The first portion of the following translation is made from the controversial document. The original of this work is entitled "The Attack of the Partisan of Justice upon the Party of the Ismailiyah and the Angry Eye upon the Party of the Qaramatta," and is an extract from a larger work entitled "The Book of the Open Ways of the Approach to God, touching on the gladdenings of divine lenity." It seems to have been written on the appearance of some followers of Karamat in the Wadi Hama, probably near to Hama in Syria, between the Hums and the Kenesrine, as Abul Feda says, who adds that those who threw off the faith of Islam had free range there. There is no precise indication of the date of its composition, nor is the name of the author given. He only calls himself Shafi, or the Shafi'ite. Somebody from a Sunni school of thought. Like, for example, one of the things they do when they pray the recommended are the recommended prayers that are for rak'ah. They break them into 2 bow sets. And they're of the opinion that you don't pray for the middle 10 minutes of the day. So the early afternoon prayer must wait 5 minutes after the solar noon. And so this is the minimum opinion I've found that seems reliable, as in something that could be determined on instruments in the first few hundred years of Al-Hijra. So this is the minimum opinion that I followed regarding that sort of thing. Anyways, this document consists of 3 parts. The author begins with 832 lines of rhythmic measure, in which he portrays the hated party against which he writes in concise and pointed terms. Other people say that the other range is as much as the middle 12th of the day is when you don't pray. So, yeah. These rhymings I have passed over in translating, as the fuller statements in prose which follow them, though less bectant as a specimen of controversy, may be more safely relied upon for information. Next introduced a piece in prose by another author. The author calls himself Al-Amidi, and it may be suggested as quite probable that he is the Saif ad-Din al-Amidi, whom Ibn Khalakhan speaks of as having taken up his residence in Hama, and there composed works on the principles of religion, and jurisprudence, and logic, and philosophy, and disputation, whose death, as the same authority informs us, took place in Al-Hijra 631, 1233 of the Common Era to 1234. It is worthy of notice in this connection that a portion of this piece strikingly resembles what von Hammer published many years ago on the Ismailis, as in substance contained in a work by Al-Jorjani, who according to Der Herbalat died in 816. Al-Hijra are 1413 to 1414 of the Common Era. The third part of this document is a statement of inquiries respecting the Nusairis presented to Taqi al-Din ibn Yatmiya with his answer. This person was a distinguished doctor of Muslim law who died according to De Herpelo in 768. Al-Hijra are 748, which is the same as 1316 1366 to 1367 of the Common Era, or 1347 to 1348 of the Common Era. It follows from the limitation of date thus given to the concluding part of this document that it must have been compiled as late as the middle of the 14th century of our era. This document was obtained by Reverend Dr. Eli Smith, missionary in Syria, from Mikhail Meshachah of Damascus. The second portion of the following translation is made from a document without a title, but of which the nature of the contents is sufficiently evident. It consists of 4 pieces. The first piece presents a system of cosmogony, the second, a formula of religious belief, the third, a mystical allegorizing of the doctrines set forth in that formula, and the fourth, the statement of the doctrines of the Imam. All these pieces are in the form declarative, not argumentative. In reading them attentively, one can resist the impression that they are specimens of the so-called sermons which the da'is or missionaries of the Ismailis are said to have been in the habit of delivering at stated seasons in general assemblies of the sect to whom they would initiate into their system. That they expressed Ismailian doctrine is put beyond doubt by allusions contained in them. But what is more, one may even refer some of them with considerable confidence to particular grades of initiation which are described by Oriental writers as recognized by this sect and are briefly alluded to in our first document. For the fourth piece of evidence, for the fourth piece evidently belongs to that stage of instruction of which the object was to impress the sense of dependence upon the Imam, and the third to that which was designed to initiate the proselyte into a pretended mystic sense of the doctrines and precepts of Islam, while the second might very appropriately have been delivered to the less advanced scholars by way of pretension of agreement with them on the part of the great in religious and worldly affairs, that is, the leading religious and civil authorities of the day, are those of the Muslimin, which are controversial, less advanced scholars by way of pretension of agreement with them on the part of the great in religious and worldly affairs, that is, the leading religious and civil authorities of the day, are those of the Muslimin, which are controversial. Document charges upon them as one of their practices. The date of these peculiar missionary sermons cannot be exactly determined, but there seems to be an intimate connection between them all, so that whatever date belongs to one is probably to be affixed to all. This document is so important for its contents, was obtained through the courtesy of Mr. von Wildenbruch, late Prussian Consul General for Syria, whose dragoman, Mr. Carthago, found it near Aleppo. As a farther introduction to the following translation are here added translations of several passages from Shahrastani's celebrated Book of Creeds and Sects relative to the parties to be brought before the reader. The passage above referred to, in which the author gives an account of al-Baqir, is also appended. It seemed more desirable to make these extracts, as no English translation of this high authority on such subjects is known to have been published, and the German translation by R. Brucker, of which the first volume has recently appeared, although a good one, does not supply the place of one in our own language. The first of these extracts relates to the Ismailis under the more general name of the Batinis. Batiniya, and Thahariya are the three forms of how to interpret religion or how to be about religion. The Batiniya is the esoteric. Thahariya is the exoteric. Wataniya is the ethnic. So a lot of things that people talk about are ethnic expressions, personal things, their own psychology. It's not per se right or wrong or the way for everybody. It's not, I mean, it's not as universal as the basic teachings itself or the principle behind those particular inflections, right? Which, you know, like the Quran and what the Prophet actually taught and, you know, his example, that sort of thing. But he gave an example through his own material culture. So, but people all over have had their Pakistani ways of Islam, their American way of Islam, their, you know, whatever country or culture you find yourself in. if you're following the teachings, you're believing in the revelation, the inspiration, and enacting the teachings. Which includes the followers of Karamat and the Usairis. The second is the Qales, the extravagant Shias in general. The third is on that particular portion of this party denominated by the Nusaris and the Ishaqis. The fourth relates to al-Bakir. Exactness has been my aim in translating, and to this, everything else has been sacrificed so far as was consistent with preserving the English idiom. The footnotes are intended mainly to facilitate the understanding of the text. A discussion of the many interesting topics suggested by it would probably have been premature if indeed it could have been entered upon. And Orthodox and orthoprax, a lot of people bring this sort of thing out. Like, now it's secondary. As I said, primary is the revelation and the inspiration. And, there's examples of the disciples and all these other people, first starting with the prophets, which these things come through. But so let's distinguish between Islam and the sects. And the sects may, in their way that's not universal, may still be acceptable in what they have. So let's, I'm not going to artificially, okay, so